What were you the god of again?
Welcome back, Dice Rollers and Role Players. Ryan with God of Crits, and we are here talking Ythryn and how to run it. Oh boy, it's going to be a lot, but my first disclaimer here is that I am kind of building off of my previous videos on what I had changed about the campaign, because not everything I love here in this campaign, so I tweaked a couple of things, including the Arcane Brotherhood and Auril's motivation, so go ahead and watch my other videos, which would help you out a good amount to kind of understanding what I'm going to be talking about here and why I think it worked so well for my groups. And let's jump right into it. I also already talked about the Rite of the Arcane Octid and how I changed that to make it a bit more interesting. And so, well, the answers are right here of what I did. So if you're curious, that's my new Rite of the Arcane Octid in the top right. Or you can go back, watch my other video. So when it comes to Ythryn, I got a couple of different maps ready. I got the one here to show to my players. And then I made one for the Spires where I numbered the Spires. Obviously, there's 11. The 12th has been broken off. Before your group actually dives in, it's important to have a good list of loot that you're going to find. The book does some of it, but they kind of nitpick and place it where it is. In my opinion, if the group is going to be traveling to a city that used to be heralded for its magical prowess and arcane superiority, I think it's important that you have some extra loot. And so I just went through and found some fun loot here and screenshotted most of it, and then was like, hey, if the group needs some loot, they can fall in here. I mean, there's going to be some hard fights in this dungeon. So I pretty much said everyone's going to have three items that they're going to be attuned to at all times. It's going to be more of a choice of what do you want to attune to. When you are dealing with Ythryn, one of the questions as a DM you want to be prepared to answer is how many people are going to be entering Ythryn after your group. I decided to keep it very low. You could go with, all of the Tiger Tribe are going to enter after the group. You could make it a bunch of allies are going to enter after the group. Maybe the Drow in the Caves of Hunger. Or you could keep it very minimal and say only enemies of the group are going to follow them and find their way in. That's the route I went. I said that this is going to be a punishing section of the campaign, and I don't really want them to have that much help. And so I said only whoever they brought in with them and a couple of their maybe biggest enemies that they had in 10 towns, just to keep those players around. I thought that would be a lot of fun. Ythryn lore is important to pepper throughout this. Unless you have already explained all of it to your group, I would recommend creating your own little lore table. You can take the one that the book has. I would recommend against the one that the book has because it spoils a good amount of things that I do not want my group to know. I do not want my group to know that he is a demi-lich, Iriolarthas that is, and I do not want my group to know that there is a scroll of summoning Tarask in this. So I have decided to make my own little thing here. It's a little bit made off of my personal backstory. So again, go check that out in my other videos and you won't be confused at all. We'll start with said Spires really quickly. I got 11 Spires just off the internet, pictures of them, and I made a quick little fun thing. The book doesn't have anything on them, and so for me, it was kind of nice to draw up some quick Spires and make a quick, reason for each Spire. I even attributed a couple of the Spires to the members of the Arcane Brotherhood that was going to be coming back here later, Nass, Velen, Dazan, stuff like that. And so I made them quick. If you guys are curious about these, you can join our Discord, and I'm happy to share my PDF here of my notes with anyone that wants it. And next is going to be the Ice Causeway, where they enter. Pretty much they walk in, and Professor Scant, the orb that they come in with, kind of gives them a brief description of what could be in the city. However, it's in Loros, which is the language they do not speak. I gave my group a couple of chances earlier in the campaign to learn it. I gave them a Loros dictionary, and if they were to spend maybe about 20 hours studying it, maybe they'd have a basic understanding and could add it to their proficiencies list. None of them did, and so for that reason, I said that Professor Scant cannot translate any Loros that is heard unless you guys find a language correspondence synthesizer. Scattered a couple of them around the city, kind of like, interpreter pretty much. And then, of course, they meet the Tomb Tapper. Great villain here for the Tomb Tapper. I really enjoyed this beast. I added a couple of things that this doesn't. I thought it'd be kind of cool if he could throw his hammer and then recall it next turn. And so that's what I did. And almost adding this new element to him where he can throw his sledgehammer and then he can move around and call it back. And it can hit some people on the way back. So that was fun. I almost killed one character with this fight right off the bat, which was kind of interesting. I think you guys can go check it out on our channel to see how all of this actually worked. Next was the Chainlight Stadium. I pretty much took this verbatim and I ran with this. I like this idea. My players decided not to do it because they felt they were under the need of some pressure. I like Chain Lightning. I think it's a cool idea. You can change the statistics of the game, although I think this is much better than Goat Ball was. I had to change Goat Ball completely, but this I actually liked. Pretty simple, pretty fun. Get some good loot out of it if you win as well. Let's talk about the towers now. This is a good way. I put all the towers just in my own little thing here. And the number one thing I'd recommend about the towers, because the book gives you a light description of what you'd find in each tower, and I'm going to be quite honest with you, I did not like it. Actively disliked it. There's references to The Shining in one of the books, like a straight ripoff of The Shining, where they say all work and no play makes a Vera a dull girl. And if you've seen The Shining, that's ripped straight from The Shining. It's also very weird for your group. If anyone's seen The Shining, it takes them right out of the game, in my opinion. I mean, there's times for jokes, but when you're entering a city, the necropolis of Ythryn, I don't think that's a time to put movie references in. And so, even though all of Ythryn is based on The Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft, it's pretty much already stripped from that. But anyways, the Towers of Ythryn, the best way, which this is where they're going to be going for the Rite of the Arcane Octid, the best way that I like to do it is I went to a Dungeon Masters Guild. You could obviously make your own. They have a PDF of all of them. I'll link them down in the description, and I think they are done masterfully. So I gave myself like an in right here. You can go watch my Rite of the Arcane Octid video. Other stuff I added, well, I guess I should say, I pretty much ran these towers just like I did, just like they have it in the PDF, only I put my Rite in of the Arcane Octid instead of the other ones. Also, very important when you're running these, to tell your group the names of the old Loros mages, so High Conjurer Daramith and stuff like this. Those will come in handy later for your group. It is very important that you name drop those. And if you have good, attentive players that keep notes, this is a situation where it will reward them significantly. The prison, I just got a map of a prison. It was quite large. You can see it here on the screen. And I was going to treat this as a dungeon crawl with some menial enemies that won't really pose a giant threat and will kind of just chip away at your group's armor. This prison is a good place to drop some of that loot and reward your players for doing stuff off the beaten path that didn't need to be done. You can also drop some secrets in here, hinting at different things and different locations, maybe some letters from inmates. Yeah, a good way to drop some lore, maybe get some nick away at your group's HP as well. But next, we are going to move on to the Spire entrance. It's pretty much just an elevator. Nothing needs to be done here. Group can't enter it till they finish the Rite of the Arcane Octid. Moving past the towers, the House of Arcane. I ran pretty much the exact same. The only thing is to note down the goblets. The book has your group drink goblets if they wish, which give them certain powers, but these powers don't kick in. They have a second effect after 24 hours. So write down which one is which. Don't try to remember. That could be kind of tough. So good note-taking there would help you out. Next is the library. I ran that the exact same. Ran it as normal. I think I tried to tie in a couple of things. Again, this book does not give you maps. It's frustrating, but Ythryn, no maps other than the big map. So I just went online, found a map here myself, and added, I went up top and wrote down a couple of important information that I want to remember. The Scriven Scry and Kingsport, I ran them. That was kind of fun to run. That's a good way to get some silliness out. I mean, this may be the first time your group actually meets someone of that's not just their party or any people that coming in after them or any villains. So this is some good role play here to stick into otherwise desolate section of the campaign. And I believe I added a book of note here, The Winds of the Night. It was encased in glass, and I said the glass had to have cast prestidigitation on it so that the book was held in its preserved state. That would be the only way that I would allow the group to take this book out without it turning to dust because it's so old. And why is that book important, you ask? Because over here, if the group is trying to get a piece of this tree off, I went out and said that this tree is a treant, and it will not give them anything. However, this tree hasn't moved in centuries and hasn't seen anyone in centuries. So what this tree wants is to be told a good story. And he wants the story that is in the library. He wants them to read the book that's in there. So they have to go there. If your group goes to that book and it's encased in glass and they just take the glass off and grab it, it should turn to dust. Your group's got to be more prepared than that. So nice little fun thing here. Also, I would possible fight that could ensue. Again, these maps are not in the book. And I haven't found a very great online source. However, I did put this all together relatively early when the book came out. Maybe there's something on Reddit that's someone put a bunch of these images and maps together for you guys, but I couldn't find that. Of course, I've told you about the towers, the Wellspring of Answers. I really like this. My group didn't run it, which was kind of upsetting. But pretty much you get to ask a question. I said that Ythryn myth says that wizards tried to gain their consciousness together and failed. So they all tried to become one beast. They became a nasty beast that hurled itself down a well. Many people claim to have heard it down there, feeding on unfulfilled wishes. I found a little monster that I wanted for it. And boom, I also found a little map. It's small, and it's helpful. And I also said that sitting on the benches and meditating could gain insights to Ythryn. Next is going to be the Bazaar. Oh lord, this headless iron golem here is a fun fight. He is currently in a fight with a bull, I believe, or something. I made it a Cyrosaurus from the Tomb of Beasts 2, page 78, because that's pretty much it's a snow rhino, and so I was like, that would be kind of fitting. And my idea was that it's a headless iron golem. He's pretty much going to be waving the white flag in front of the bull the whole time. However, he's blind. Fun fight here. When the group enters, I rolled a percentile and just subtracted that from both of their healths, because they should not be at full health for this fight. They've been fighting each other when the group enters for a long time, so they should be a little damaged. I even got a nice shield here, another piece of loot. I mean, this is the Bazaar, right? This is the mercantile district. This is where everyone goes, used to go, right, to trade. And so there should be a significant amount of loot here if your group wants to stick around. You could do a more punishing thing of saying, all right, however long you stay, there's going to be a potential for a random encounter, especially with the beasts that we talked a little bit about earlier, the Tomb Tappers. The Tomb Tappers show up when there is magic being activated in the city. So this could be pretty lethal if your group has to fight a headless iron golem and then gets over greedy, wants to loot, and a Tomb Tapper show up. That is the perfect brew for a TPK, in my opinion. And so, yeah, it was fun. The group kind of got to watch and then decide who they want to aid. Also, Bazaar, another great way to introduce other places. One of the ways I did that is there was a little stand that was the Hall of Silk. It was a trader from the Hall of Silk had set up a stand at the Bazaar, and when the group went to the little shop, they realized they could go to the main Hall of Silk. And here is where I think I tied in a spyglass that was tied into the divination tower. There are some beasts up top in the divination tower, and one of the beasts is a high intelligence beast. I forget the name of the monster. You probably shouted it at the screen right now anyways. But yeah, and one of them pretty much says, I will give you what you want if you go and get this spyglass that was left in the Hall of Silk. Cool. I like the way it's ran. I think the Hall of Silk has these spiders that can weave suits for your group. I really like that. I kept that. I also said that if your group is going to be attending Iriolarthas' party, that they would need, or that it would help to have these suits. It would help their persuasion on the way in. So I did that. Moving right along, the observatory I took out. I changed the observatory to the Tower of Divination. I made them one. I did this just to simplify things. I don't think the observatory really had that much going for it, so I merged them together. The Menagerie. Menagerie is a lot of fun. It has a... I added a spell scroll. It has a chimera creator. I made my own. I thought it was a little bit... I like the idea, love it, and decided to make it my own. And I made it almost like a maze. You can see the map here, and I was also going to present it almost as a horror type room where they're entering and they see these taxidermized beasts that are just staring in every corner. When they turn the corner, there's one there, and it's very frightening. And then once they use the chimera creator, I was going to have one of those beasts wake up in the room, kind of a fun thing, and be wandering around. And so if the group makes its way back, they're probably gonna have to fight something. Next is the theater. When we talk about the Rite of the Arcane Octid, I told you earlier that I had made a play. This is where the play is performed. This is also where, if you do what I've done, you've made a play for the Rite of the Arcane Octid, and it all ends here. Arl will show up at the end of the play, and that will be Arl's first phase fight, is going to be at this theater right here. And so I had Arl approaching the back. I had 3 glacial corruptors, can't speak, which are in Tomb of Beasts, and I think 2 cold blight walkers. And that was my first fight. And perfect. And I also have, as DMs, you hate to do it, but you do want to have an out, because you really don't want to TPK your whole party right here, unless you do. So I said it could be saved by Avarice. My group had kept her alive, and then that was a point here at the theater where I had them level up, because this is also the point where after they defeat Arl's first form, and Arl disappears, then your group now has finished the Rite of the Arcane Octid. They can go wherever they want in the city. They can go right to Ythryn Mythylar. Once they finish the rite, the whole map opens up to their pleasure. The Spire of Iriolarthas I will talk about in its own video. It's very long, it leads into a couple of endings, and it's very important. So I'm going to skip that and do a deeper dive on that later. So onto the Obelisk. It uses Iriolarthas' Staff of Power. I changed it a little bit, which I'll talk again in my Iriolarthas video and in my endings video. Ythryn Mythylar is something that ties so heavily into the ending of the campaign that again, it's going to be its whole other video in the ending video. So if your group comes here, it is nearing the end of your campaign. You could be in your last session, totally. So be prepared for that. Watch my other video on that. Will be coming out soon, and I'll go into a deep dive of how to handle stuff like Iriolarthas, Ythryn, and the Obelisk, and ending your campaign here. And next is the Hall of Weightless Wonder. The Hall of Weightless Wonder is a great opportunity for your group to get a leg up on whatever is happening here in Ythryn. If they go here and they can pretty much astral project themselves and project image themselves into another body that can walk around and perform all these tasks. This is what the Ythryn of old used to do when they got too tired. They'd have themselves go to work, a copy of themselves go to work. However, if your group's smart and your group thinks it through, they could have a copy of themselves go to the party at Iriolarthas. And that way, if stuff does go bad there, they just wake back up in the Hall of Weightless Wonder. Or if they know a fight is coming, or if they're not sure if a fight is coming, but they need to kind of talk their way through it, this is a great opportunity, and my group totally didn't take it, and I was massively surprised. Next is going to be the music hall. I didn't change anything in the music hall. I kept it the same. And next is the Skydock Spire. And I decided that Avarice was going to be here at Skydock Spire. This was going to make it her kind of outpost. I also said that Nimsy Huddle from Lonelywood comes with avarice, and I kind of make it a plot twist that Nimsy Huddle was a member of the Arcane Brotherhood, and the group never knew about it. You totally don't have to do this. One of the spires that I talked about earlier is, I think, the spire of that when the group goes, they find notes of a rogue that could cast spells, and this rogue, it was their journey to go and infiltrate themselves into 10 towns and then make their way back here when they could. That turned out to be Nimsy Huddle, and it's a great revelation for your group to realize that she is pretty much deceiving them the whole way and now fights for the enemy. It was good, fun. I also said that this group of women enemies was also joined by the Tiger Tribe leader, Bjornhild, and that was fun. This led to a fight that later ensued between the three of the girls and the group. It was one of the final fights we had. Lastly, we have the museum. I added a good amount to the museum. I thought it would be a really fun, creepy way for my group to be introduced to what and how the Loros and the Ythryn lived. So I got a couple of maps here that I'd found online. I decided to make this a good lore dump for a couple of things. First, this is where your group can find out all about the casters of old from Ythryn, all of the high wizards. And so I put all of the information blocks here with a statue. I said that there was a statue standing of them. And for those of your group that really love backstory, I let them dive into it here. I also made a couple of exhibits, and this was a way for me to flex storytelling. And so I made a couple of stories, and I believe an illusion of kind of a old Ythryn tour guide showed up and would speak in Loros and tell them these stories. One was the story of the master and apprentice. I have it here. If you guys really care, you can copy and paste it. And then the next was something I called Bigsby's Box Paradox. And I also kind of added the little bit of lore that Iriolarthas' Staff of Power was actually Bigsby's. And the group could find it that way. Or the group could find out that Iriolarthas had stolen it through this story. You can read it here and figure it out later. It's pretty much just Schrodinger's cat made D&D. So yeah, that is pretty much all I had for the museum. It was a lot of fun for the group to walk around and explore. And I think that is all I've got for this video. This is just the bare bones of Ythryn. I will go into separate videos, both Iriolarthas and the ending of this campaign and how to wrap it up and make it to a nice bow, because the book gives you a couple of options, but I don't think it gives you enough, especially when your campaign is going to be potentially very different. But it does offer some stuff that I really like, and I as a DM was like, I like the idea of that. I'm going to run with that in my own way. So that is all I have for Ythryn. This was quite a long video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. And if there's not a section I covered in here, then just assume that I ran it the exact same and that I didn't have that many problems with it. Well, until the next time, roll on, gamers.